It's great to see this audience, so many friends, so many individuals who have been so important to what we're about at Western Kentucky University. You've shaped our history, you've built our traditions, and you've created the pride that we all share in our institution. And I could not be more proud to see this group here today to recognize the three distinguished individuals that we induct into our Hall of Distinguished Alumni. I'm always pleased to attend this induction ceremony. No event that we do on our calendar represents WKU's past, blends it with its present, while offering such hope for our future. This year's inductees are Bg Adair, Richard Finley Grice, and John Magda. All are individuals who serve as embodiments of the WKU spirit, the spirit that drives everything we're about as a university family and is the energy behind every decision we make. Now, with their inductions into the Hall of Distinguished Alumni, future generations of WKU students will know their names, be inspired by their accomplishments, and find in them role models for their own lives. And as a university community, as members of this university family, one of the most important things we do is set the example for our students to follow so that they can see citizenship, responsibility, integrity, character, all the things that drive this American democracy that we all enjoy. That's what the recipients of this Hall of Distinguished Alumni have throughout its history done for our students, and they are the mentors, the role models that we want our students to emulate. This year's inductees include an acclaimed jazz pianist, a noted surgeon, and a decorated fighter pilot and commander of the Blue Angels. These three individuals will join 66 other WKU greats inducted since the Hall was established in 1992. Leo, if you'll come on up here to the table, please. We will get started with our induction ceremony. So if you will find a clear view of the screens on either end of the room, we will begin our induction of the 2006 Hall of Distinguished Alumni class for this year. It's my pleasure to start with Miss Bg Adair. Miss Bg Adair's credits read like a who's who of the Nashville music scene. Her passion for jazz, coupled with an extraordinary talent for blending that form into the popular music of the day, has made her a mainstay in the music world and the entertainment industry as a whole. She has lent her unique talent to the recordings of such legendary artists as Johnny Cash, Dolly Parton, and Chet Atkins. But her work is not limited to the recordings alone. She was the in-house pianist for the Johnny Cash Show, which aired on ABC. Her work in television led her to work with such names as Neil Diamond, Mama Cass Elliott, Peggy Lee, Lucille Ball, Carol Burnett, Dinah Shore, only to name a few. In addition to her accompaniment work for both television and the movies, she has garnered critical acclaim for her own recordings. Her ability to stretch the jazz form and to introduce jazz to new generations of music lovers, turning them into jazz lovers, has gained her the respect of her peers. She received the 1998 Nashville Music Award Jazz Album of the Year for the Frank Sinatra Collection. In 1991, she recorded her first trio album, Escape to New York. Numerous albums have followed, as have accolades, and in July 2002, she was number 25 on the Billboard for Jazz Albums chart. In addition to recording and performing, Bg Adair shares her singular talent with others by teaching. Years ago, she taught in Kentucky public schools. Today, she is an adjunct professor in jazz studies at Vanderbilt University. Vanderbilt University's Blair School of Music, and teaches singers repertoire for the National Jazz Workshop. It is impossible to speak of the rise of Nashville's jazz scene without mentioning Bg Adair. Her tireless efforts as a pianist, teacher, and artist over the last 3 decades have ingratiated her to fellow musicians in multiple genres to fans around the country. Our first 2006 Hall of Distinguished Alumni inductee, Miss Bg Adair.
Bobby Gorin Long Adair, known to family, friends, and fans as BG, came to the keyboard early in life.
I don't remember when I didn't play the piano. I know that sounds a little strange, but my earliest memories, I'm crawling up on this old, great big old upright with the big old wooden stool.
From early childhood, Bg was surrounded by music and encouraged by family to pursue her musical gift. After high school, she came to then Western Kentucky Teachers College to study.
I actually got a scholarship to the University of Kentucky, an academic scholarship. But my grandmother had gone to Ogden Normal School, and she had a teaching certificate from there from like 1903 or something, I don't know. And it was close to home, and I think she had always entertained the idea that I would follow along in the Western tradition, you know. But I didn't want to major in music. I was very high on journalism. She kept saying, I know you think you want to do this, but you're not old enough to make this decision by yourself, and I'm afraid you're going to do the wrong thing. And I kept, you know, fighting against all that and saying, no, I'm going to go be a journalist, and I can always play the piano when I feel like it, like that. And so she said, I'll make a deal with you. If you'll go to Western for 1 semester and go as a music major, then if you don't like it, then you can go wherever you want to go, and I'll pay for it. And of course, I mean, within the first month I was at Western, I met all these wonderful musicians, and I had such good teachers and everything.
After graduating from Western, Adair taught music for 3 years, all the while running back and forth to Nashville to play on the weekends. In 1961, she made the transition to Nashville permanent and began playing with music legends such as Chet Atkins, Johnny Cash, and Dolly Parton. She eventually found herself playing with singer-songwriter and musical funny man Ray Stevens.
It seems like I've always known her since I've been here, you know, because we're both in the music business. And I know her as a very talented, gifted piano player and musician, and a nice person, and a friend who at one time was in my road band. Well, she's just good. I mean, it's no big mystery why she stands out, not only to me, but to anybody who can appreciate talent. She plays, wow, I mean, you know, better than most people even think about playing, you know, so, and with no effort at all, it seems.
Adair's career collaborations reads like a who's who in the entertainment industry, but people have always recognized something special about the way she plays.
There's an elegance to her playing. First of all, like I said, she knows the songbook inside out perfectly. She knows the material, but she has her own musicality, her own sense of harmonic structure, or being able to arrange one of the classic American songs in just a really musical, interesting way to play the songs. And I enjoy working with that as a bass player.
She has what jazz players and other good players call huge ears. She can hear anything and play it back to you. She can hear anything off a record. She has perfect pitch, really. And she's a great player, just in and of itself. But beyond that, you can go to her and say, does that chord on there sound like a C minor 9 or a C minor 11? And she'll just tell you right off the bat. It's real easy for her, and always has been.
Her musical repertoire includes CDs covering Frank Sinatra, Nat King Cole, and Cole Porter. But jazz seems to be her music of choice.
She has what can't be taught. My teacher at Indiana, David Baker, used to say when he was teaching jazz, he says, you can learn jazz, but it can't be taught. What he meant was he would expose you to the music, and if you got it, you would learn from that, and you would grow. Well, she gets it. There are a lot of people that have studied longer and harder and can't play the way she plays.
Actually, as a jazz musician, sometimes you kind of lay for those moments, and you hope you'll have one, you know, a week or a month or something. A lot of times it happens on the bandstand. I mean, if you have a particularly good night when everybody is clicking with the trio, you know, we look around at each other, and everybody's got a big silly grin on their face, you know. And it's what Mike Luongo says, the music, when it sort of takes on life of its own, he says it's when your feet leave the ground.
Hanging around folks like Bg makes you forget that what she does is hard, because not very many people can do it that well.
Currently, Adair is an adjunct professor of music at Vanderbilt University, playing weekly at a jazz club in Nashville and teaching at the newly opened Nashville Jazz Workshop. With a successful career that has spanned genres and decades, Bg Adair continues to use her gift to entertain and educate. 2006 Hall of Distinguished Alumni inductee, Bg Adair.
Because I was afraid I would either leave somebody out or make a complete fool of myself by talking too long, I wrote it down. The butterflies are really flying around today. The singer Gladys Knight has recently put out an album of jazz standards called Before Me. She was quoted as saying, "This album is dedicated to Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, Carmen McRae, Dinah Washington, and others who came before me. I stand on their shoulders." So today I like to acknowledge the people upon whose shoulders I stand. Nobody gets anywhere alone. Everybody has to look at the past to understand where they're going and where they've been. Pianists especially are aware of what musicians call the thread. It's a way of tracing your musical roots through your teachers and your teachers' teachers. My thread is especially strong because I happened to come to Western in the 50s. In the middle of the last century, I actually can't believe those words are coming out of my mouth, we had teachers at Western's music department who were world-class teachers themselves, and they had also studied with world-class composers and teachers, some in the 19th century, the late 19th century. So we had access to a lot of wonderful, wonderful music. It was a good time to be here. I studied with Dr. Stephen Barwick the first year. He had studied with Claudio Arrau, who had studied with Martin Kreutzer, who had studied with Franz Liszt. In 1955, Dr. Joseph Running came. I studied with him for the remainder of the time here. He had studied with Ernst Dohnanyi at Florida State when the maestro was quite old. When Dr. Dohnanyi was young in Europe, he studied with Brahms. So my thread is strong. This was the kind of education to be had at Western in the 50s, and it still is. On a personal note, Joe Running, my old professor, is in Seattle. He's in his late 80s. He's lost most of his sight, but he's still playing. For those of you music majors that are here today, you'll remember Joe Running. He was a mentor and friend to all of us, and a wonderful professor. He's come to see me a couple of times at Jazz Alley in Seattle. Other shoulders, starting with Roy Dickey Reynolds, who nominated me for this lovely honor. He and Carol have given me and all of my Caverna friends a lifetime of love, support, humor, and encouragement. We think of you all as our second set of parents. My grandparents, Grover and Sally Long, and my parents, Bobby and A.G. Long, all of Cave City, were farmers, mechanics, bookkeepers, and teachers. My grandfather taught me to read very early, as he was disabled and couldn't chase a 4-year-old around the room, so we sat and listened to the radio, read books, and told stories. He also taught me to drink coffee at age 6, to read the morning paper every day from cover to cover, and to vote every time the polls opened, preferably the straight Democratic ticket. I haven't forgotten Grover. My grandmother, Sally, as it said in the video, was an Ogden normal school graduate, and she taught Roy Dickey as well. We all go back a long way. She taught in the Cape City and the Barron County school systems for 42 years. It was truly terrifying to have your grandmother be your 5th grade teacher, but I did. But I can still add figures in my head, do multiplication in my sleep, and I can parse a sentence and use the right grammar, because if I don't, she'll come back to haunt me. My mother instilled in me a lifelong love of reading for pleasure, and my mother and father kept the house filled with people and music. They danced on the kitchen floor. There was a lot of dancing and guitar playing going on as a way to get away from what was happening in Europe in the 40s. There was lots of singing. My father taught me San Antonio Rose when I was about 7, and he and I played it together until the end of his life. He died at 93, 3 years ago. I learned a lot from them. More strong threads. My Kaverna High School friends have remained my friends for over 50 years, and a great number of them are here today, and I'm so glad you're all here, and I can't name everybody because we'd be here all day, but I just want you to know I love you all. The ones I do want to point out are Lynn Jeffcoat, my best buddy from 4th grade. Everybody has a best buddy from 4th grade. And Jerry Logston and I have been together since our mothers were pregnant with us in 1937. Literally friends for life and from birth. Everybody else who means so much to me, thank you so much for showing up. Also a word about our teachers in Kaverna, especially Louise Christian, who taught me to love poetry and literature. And the poetry came in handy when I wrote advertising jingles later in life. Eleanor Meacham Smith, another very strong woman in my life, my piano teacher at Kaverna, who encouraged me to become serious about my music. My college friends, Marcia Williams, whom I met on registration day 1954. Marcia's late husband was in one of the pictures in the video playing saxophone. He was the funniest person I ever met. His name was Jerry, and he was an alto player, and he was the marching band drum major for 4 years at Western. He, Charlie Sanders, and I formed the first trio I was ever in. My roommate from McLean Hall, number 208, Beverly Harper Wathen. We've been friends since walking to biology together that first year. We shared an apartment later as young music teachers in the Owensboro City school systems, and our husbands, Ed and Bill, agree that we have been carrying on the same conversation now for 52 years, with no end in sight. My teachers here at Western, Benny Beach and his wife Pearl, who could not be with us today, I'm sad to say, Dr. Howard Carpenter and Jean opened their hearts and their houses to all of us in the music department. We babysat their kids, raided their refrigerators, and listened to their stereos. It was a rich time. 8-year-old John, excuse me, 8-year-old John Carpenter, whom you may have heard of, in the midst of an early drama, complete with camera, dialogue, props, and actors, who were usually the babysitters, once tied Beverly to a kitchen chair in the little log house that was the Carpenter's residence. Apparently she was kidnapped by the villain du jour. Several of us affected her rescue before Jean and Howard got home, so no harm was done, and John went on, of course, to be an award-winning movie director. Nell Gooch Travelstead, and a lot of you remember her, was, I have to say, one of my main mentors in my life, besides the women in my family. She was the most formidable woman I've ever met besides my grandmother and my mother. She could hear a wrong note a mile away, and she would let you know it. Her solfeggio classes taught me sight reading skills that I use daily to this day. We were terrified of her, but we loved her dearly. In another era, she would have been head of the department. Present threads. My bass player, whom you met on the video, Roger Spencer, drummer Chris Brown, with whom I've recorded 22 albums. They go on the road with me, they make me laugh, they support me, they play my music, and they are the other 2 parts of the trio in a very real way, equal thirds. My personal manager, my friend, and support system on the road, Gregory Bowerline, sitting over there with some of my Kaverna folks. And somebody that was mentioned briefly in the video, Mike Luongo, is a Western graduate a year later from me, an internationally famous jazz pianist, music director, and pianist for Dizzy Gillespie for many years, has a big band, teaches as an adjunct at Rutgers, lives in Manhattan, and is internationally famous. He has been my friend and support system. He has been my mentor and colleague since we were 18 here on the Hill. I hope someday to see him up here on this podium because he is very worthy. And the strongest shoulders of all, my husband Bill, who after 31 years is still, for some reason, under the impression that I actually know what I'm doing, and supports and encourages me unconditionally. He's cute too. Lastly, and I can't leave this one out, our English setter Winston, who makes a dramatic exit every time I sit down to play the piano. I tell him everybody's a critic, but he keeps me grounded. And in closing, I want to say thanks so much to Dr. Ransdell and all the wonderful staff and the alumni workers and everybody on the campus. I'm so proud of Western, and I get prouder every year when I come back. Thanks for all the wonderful work you continue to do, Dr. Ransdell and everybody on our behalf, old and new. To Tracy Morrison for all your work. I could not have gone through this process without her. I told her, I don't know how much they're paying you, but I'm sure it's not nearly enough. And for the video, to Cheryl Beckley and Barbara Deeb, who did a beautiful job and made me feel very comfortable, and their student assistant, Jessica Gibbs, who I think embodies the spirit of this college. I was so impressed with this young woman, and I continue to see the spirit in young people like her every time I'm here. I'm proud to have been a part of this wonderful institution. I loved it here, and I still do. I cannot begin to thank you enough for this lovely day and this honor, and I will cherish this. Thank you.
Richard Findlay Grice.